Welcome to our Wellness Hub. My name is Moni C. I'm your host and mindset coach. I help women who need direction, confidence, and purpose by giving them actionable tools to improve their lives. I also interview experts in the field of health, wellness, healing, and mindset to offer additional support for people in their journeys of healing and improving their lives. Today, we have a spectacular guest. Her name is Danielle Green, Dr. Danielle Green. She has a P.h.D. in psychoanalytical psychology. She's an ordained clergy, an international retreat leader, and an expert in generational and ancestral family therapy. Danielle, I am honored to have you here today. Tell us a bit about yourself and what are you doing today to help people from around the world? The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel honored to have this time with you and also to welcome your listeners to our conversation today. Well, a little bit about me. A psychoanalyst and a marriage and family therapist, and I have offices in Sarasota, Florida, and also Los Angeles. And I work with individuals, couples, and families, and yet I have a couple of areas of specific interest that I spent many years of my life researching and speaking on and leading groups and retreats around the world. Shall I tell you a little bit about those?
Well, tell us, I would love to know about your 15-year research that you told me about.
Yes, well, that's a big part of my life's journey. And it began with a personal experience that I had as a child in which I didn't know exactly what was happening to me, but it drove my life. And it led to my research in mysticism. Specifically, what I ended up researching, beginning to understand myself was the intention. And then in time, it became a professional calling. And that is understanding how people have certain types of mystical experiences that guide their lives forever. Historically, we haven't always understood mysticism. There's actually a very distinct difference between mysticism and spirituality. People can have very specific spiritual experiences that are profound, that guide them, and a strong intuitive hunch about something, a strong intuitive knowing. And I certainly had those experiences as a child. And yet, in this one event, when I was 9 years old, I heard a voice. I saw a vision. It was overwhelming to me as a child, coming from the rural area of the Midwest that I was living in with my family. I had no idea what was happening, but I never forgot it, and I thought about it for years. And it was out of that that I grew to understand that this was an experience we would call a mystical call, that every world tradition and every culture around the world throughout antiquity has had such experiences in their population, and it's actually well documented. So I set out on a journey and traveled the world looking and interviewing people to see what do they have in common? What does it mean? How's it interpreted in the Jewish faith, in the Christian faith, in the Muslim, in Sufism? There's a lot of work about that in Buddhism. And also people who had no particular religious tradition. How did they understand that? And meeting so many wonderful people, I began to understand the distinction with different types of calls. But I narrowed in on what it means to have a mystical call, how that shapes the life, and actually then changes the personality structure. And so as a result, my dissertation for my PhD is in psychoanalysis and mysticism with a specialty in understanding the mystical call.
And your specific mystical experience, what did you see? I'm still very curious when you were 8, 9 years old.
Yes, that's right. Well, I was sitting outside on a summer evening by a lake, and in the quietness, all of a sudden, I heard a voice, and the voice told me that I was being called to service to do a particular job in India. Now, I have to tell you, I'm not even sure I knew just where India was. I didn't know what this meant. I know that after this peaceful sense, and then this light that came to me directing me, I was left initially very calm, a stillness that I can imagine I knew before. And after that, it was overwhelming to me. Now, here's the thing that changed everything. And I was able to track in my research because this happened with every single person that experienced a mystical call. And that is, following the mystical call, a kind of synchronicity took place that could not have any kind of direct conscious link. And here's what happened to me. I was sitting by that lake that night at a little summer camp. After that, I went back to my bunk and I remember that I was very scared and very tearful and I fell asleep. The next morning, I got up with all the other 8, 9, 10-year-old girls to take off for breakfast. And the woman in my cabin, who was our camp counselor, pulled me aside and said, "I need to speak with you." And she sat down on the lower bunk with me. And it's a moment that was marked in time forever, Monique. I honestly could remember what she was wearing, how I was feeling, my breathing. And she said, "You know, I am an older woman and I had an experience last night that I need to tell you about." Now, I had never spoken to this person one on one. It was always just a group of 8 girls and being guided from one activity to the next. And she said, "I believe that I had a visit, a direct link from God. And God spoke to me and told me something that I don't understand, but I have to tell you because I was instructed to tell you." And I said, "Well, what was it?" And she said, "I was guided to tell you that God has called you to serve others and that you have a job to do in India."
Wow, that's
Yeah.
incredible.
It really was. And one of the powerful things about mystical calls is every single person I spoke with traveling the world, often with an interpreter, having to hear it over and over to make sure I got everything and recording it for the research back in Berkeley that I needed to be able to document. And every person had the most amazing synchronicity of something. And synchronicities are things that you can make no causal link. It beats all statistical odds. Is that kind of event that happens, and it's a confirmation of the call.
That's absolutely fascinating. Is this a book?
It is actually, it is. It was my dissertation, and then I took the material and I collapsed it into a more readable form. And the book you can find, of course, on Amazon and various sites. And it's entitled A Magnificent Obsession: My Lifelong Search for the Meaning of a Mystical Call.
Well, the audience is going to have the link right under our interview. Absolutely fascinating. So there's so much to talk about. How do you help people today? I know that do you do one-on-one sessions? Do you do group sessions or mainly one-on-one?
No, I do a lot of groups. I am honored to say I have quite a waiting list. And so one way that I've managed wanting to work with a lot of people are those people that I believe what they're working with could be well served in group. And also, I found that group and intensive retreat work, people often, when they're really ready to change, they have much more intensive assistance from me and also from everybody in the group that becomes co-healers for each other. And so as a result, I believe that people can save time and money and transform their lives in a way they're wanting to. So yes, I work with individuals and couples and families, but I run specific retreats for people that seem like they're appropriate. I invite them in, although your listeners are welcome to reach out and I'll give them information if it'd be appropriate for them. But the kinds of work that I do with groups include everything from people seeking deeper states of consciousness. I also run a retreat that's all about healing states of consciousness, and I call it the healing states of consciousness, uh, where neuroscience and mysticism and magic meet. And here we really explore the range of states of consciousness where I teach people how to go in and out of hypnosis and discover their range that really is based on EEG. So it's scientifically based on when a person is in that range, they are more likely to understand the frequency of their lives, to work with certain parts of the brain for manifestation, for performance. A lot of actors, directors, professional athletes love this because it's amazing how, as I'm sure you know from the fine work that you do, that when people hold that intention, but they also know how to work with the brain, then it's the kind of magic that begins to unfold. That's always one of my favorite areas. And then let me say something else. I love conducting what I call family reunions. It was especially more common in Europe. I've worked with families where there's 40 in a group, but everyone's related. And we are together anywhere from 5 to generally 7 to 8 days. Although I once led a group in Europe that lasted 28 days. There were a lot of complex issues, and it served as a kind of private rehab program for people who needed it and reworking the family system. So out of that, people leave having done the amount of work that might take place over 2 or 3 years, but without everyone there to really work the relationships with each person in the family where there's been wounding and how to begin on a path of healing and seeing each other anew. So those are my favorite areas, along with my dream analysis groups. We meet each month. I'll hopefully always have those because of the power of dream world to guide and heal a life.
And these retreats, you do them in a specific place or you go somewhere every time is a different place?
Both. I have a retreat center in Georgia, and so many people from everywhere fly into Brunswick, Georgia, and we'll have retreats there. And often I'll rent a retreat center or somebody who has a very large home. I've opened a home. Some families have chosen to have private retreats and they bring in people and have it in their own homes. But most often I have it in a retreat center or another facility.
And when you do the retreats, it's only you or you have other
It's
experts?
just me. It's just me. I'm sure I could use help, but, of course, other people take care of the food and making sure the place is there and everyone's cared for. But I have facilitated the retreats alone for a long time. I've been out there kind of like a lone ranger, I guess. But it's what I love, and I have a lot of energy for it.
It's incredible. And you told me that you help people hypnotize themselves. Can you do that in one session or does it take a long time to do that? It depends on the person too.
It does depend on the person, but frankly, to really learn how to do it in a way that you can make use of how to not just take yourself into a trance state, but how to talk to yourself, how to give yourself suggestions, how to know what state in the trance world is going to be most effective for you and the length of time it may take. Now, here's the piece that's so important. When people consciously set out for a certain goal, everything that blocks that goal has a way of coming out. And a lot of the work in the retreat is how to clear out those blocks so that one can see if that goal is truly aligned with one's what we might call dharma, that duty of soul. So generally, people do the self-hypnosis work all in groups. And that way I can watch their breathing. They can watch me work with someone else. People learn from one another and they get to cover all the material that's so important in usually a 4-day intensive, sometimes 5 days. And then everyone leaves with follow-up. And then I personally follow up with them. And then we come back together, often on Zoom because people are from all around the world. Or if they're in a location, people like to come back and follow up with each other, review the goals that have been met. And if there are blocks, those goals being met, that gives me a chance to work with them right then and there, see what it's like to clear that and let it be manifested. And so that work to cover that kind of intensive work, we work 8 and 10 hours a day. It really is an intensive retreat setting for people to learn self-hypnosis well.
And I have one question for you. When people talk to you, you absorb a lot of their energy and many times it's negative. How do you let go? How do you relax? How do you stay light and positive?
I think It's very interesting. I'll say a couple things about that. There are a lot of rational, practical, behavioral things we can all do. But you're asking this takes me into another realm in which I had another mystical experience. And I was told that if I wanted to commit my life to service, I would be cared for, I would be protected. And that happened a few years after the original mystical experience. And I've really trusted that. So out of that, I feel like I have really been blessed with a lot of energy and good health. And I do a lot of things to keep that going, as I'm sure you do. Things that I do is that I meditate every day. Ideally, I would meditate twice a day. I participate and enjoy all different types of meditations, but my particular practice is transcendental meditation. But I love the TM process because I love the research they do, and I have found that it's been very effective in my life to keep my energy up, to remember the transcendent realm, to remember that every soul suffering, my own suffering, everyone's suffering, there's meaning in it.
Danielle, time flew by and there is so much knowledge in you. One interview is not enough, definitely. I just wanted to thank you once again for sharing your story and in such a short time. You're truly an inspiration to the world and the younger population everywhere. We will definitely see you again. And for the moment, thank you again. And
Thank you. Thank you.
until next time.